What do you do when the person you loved walks away? When the future you planned burns to the ground in a single moment? When the silence in your room is louder than your will to try again? No one teaches you what to do with heartbreak that won't leave, or with failure that rewrites your identity. The world moves on while you're frozen. People tell you to stay strong, but they don't tell you how. They say it'll get better, but they don't sit with you in the meantime. So you're left alone, searching for something, anything that makes the pain make sense. This is where philosophy matters, not as an academic subject, but as a survival guide. Stoicism wasn't born in universities or cozy debates. It was forged in the realest kind of pain: exile, war, slavery, disease. Epictetus had iron chains around his legs when he began to think about freedom. Marcus Aurelius ruled the Roman Empire while burying his children and fighting plagues and betrayal. Seneca wrote his best letters while under the constant threat of execution. These weren't men who escaped suffering. They lived in the middle of it, and from inside that chaos, they built something strong enough to hold on to when everything else falls apart. Stoicism is not about becoming numb. It's not about pretending nothing hurts. It's about building the mental strength to stay standing even when it does. It teaches you to protect your peace, to sharpen your judgment, and to turn inward, not to hide, but to anchor yourself when the world outside becomes too heavy. It doesn't offer easy answers, but it offers clarity. And in the darkest moments of life, clarity is worth more than comfort. When everything breaks down, Stoicism reminds you that while you can't control what's happening, you can control how you respond to it. That may sound small, it's not. It's everything. It means that no matter how hopeless, unfair, or painful the situation is, there is still one power no one can take from you: your choice. How you show up in this moment, what you choose to think, what you choose to say, what you choose to do. That's where your strength lives, not in changing the world, but in refusing to be destroyed by it. And that's the truth most people never hear. Mental strength isn't something you're born with. It's something you build, not during the good times, but especially when life falls apart. When you're sitting in the rubble of your plans, Stoicism hands you a blueprint. Not to rebuild the world exactly as it was, but to rebuild yourself. Wiser, stronger, and more at peace than before. Not by running from the pain, but by learning how to carry it. So if you're hurting right now, this isn't about ignoring it. It's about realizing that the hurt is not the end. It's the beginning of your training, the moment you stop asking, why me, and start asking, how can I endure this well? That's when the shift happens. That's when you stop being a victim of life and start becoming the kind of person no storm can break. Not because you never feel pain, but because you've learned how to face it. When you hear the word philosophy, it's easy to imagine dusty books, abstract arguments, and people sitting in libraries arguing over the meaning of life. But Stoicism didn't come from that world. It wasn't born in lecture halls or among people who had the luxury of free time. It came from people who were tested by life in the most brutal ways possible. People who lost everything: status, safety, even freedom, and still chose to hold on to their inner strength. If you strip Stoicism down to its essence, it's not about ideas, it's about survival. Take Epictetus. He wasn't a noble, a king, or a scholar born into comfort. He was born into slavery in the Roman Empire. He didn't grow up learning philosophy from books. He learned it through pain. He was beaten, silenced, and chained. At one point, it's said that his master twisted his leg until it broke. But Epictetus didn't beg or scream. He looked him in the eye and said calmly, "You're going to break it." And when it snapped, he only said, "I told you so." Years later, when he became a teacher of philosophy, he walked with a limp, not just as a physical reminder, but as a living testament to his endurance. He never forgot his chains, but he also never let them define him. Epictetus said, "You may chain my leg, but not even Zeus can conquer my will." Think about that. A man who had every right to feel powerless was more free on the inside than most emperors were on the outside. He understood something most people never realize. The world can take your job, your health, your reputation, even the people you love, but it can't touch your ability to choose how you respond. That's where your true power lives. Not in avoiding hardship, but in rising above it. Then there's Marcus Aurelius. Unlike Epictetus, Marcus was born into privilege. He was emperor of the most powerful empire in the world. He lived in palaces. He commanded armies. He could have spent his life indulging in luxury and ordering people around. But life didn't care about his title. During his reign, he faced constant war. He lost many of his children. He ruled through one of the worst plagues in Roman history. And despite being surrounded by power, he often felt completely alone. But Marcus didn't run from the pain. He didn't numb himself with distractions. He turned to philosophy as a weapon, and every night he would write to himself, not as an emperor, but as a struggling human being trying to stay strong. Those writings would later become his famous book, Meditations, which wasn't meant to be published. It was his personal journal, a man at the top of the world, privately reminding himself to stay grounded, to stay rational, and to not let the suffering around him consume who he was inside. What's powerful about Marcus is not that he ruled with an iron fist, it's that he ruled with a clear mind and an open heart while carrying more grief than most people could bear. He wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." This wasn't theoretical for him, it was practical. Every day he faced uncertainty, betrayal, and death, and every day he came back to the same principles: control what you can, let go of what you can't, and keep your character intact no matter what happens. This is why Stoicism is different from other philosophies. It wasn't created by people who had easy lives. It wasn't designed for people looking to escape the world. It was built by people who were knee-deep in suffering, who had every reason to give up but didn't. These weren't people who said, "Just stay positive." They said, "Life is hard, pain is guaranteed, but you are stronger than you think." And they didn't just say it, they lived it. The truth is, when everything's going well, it's easy to act wise. It's easy to stay calm when nothing's testing you. But Stoicism was made for the days when nothing makes sense, for the moments when your heart is broken and your mind is full of chaos. It was made for those nights when you lie awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering how it all went so wrong. And in those moments, it doesn't offer you false hope. It doesn't promise that things will magically get better. What it gives you is much more honest and much more powerful. It gives you the tools to face reality as it is, to stop running, to stop wishing things were different, and to start building something solid within yourself. Something that doesn't break when life does. Something that doesn't disappear when people leave or when dreams collapse. That's what Epictetus discovered in slavery. That's what Marcus practiced on the battlefield. And that's what you can begin to build right now, right here, in the middle of your own pain. Because pain doesn't make you weak. It reveals the strength you didn't know you had. Stoicism isn't about pretending everything is fine. It's about standing in the middle of the storm and saying, even if I lose everything, I won't lose myself. And when you get to that point, when you stop needing life to be easy, you become unbreakable. Not because you're numb, but because you've seen what's hard and you kept going anyway. This is the foundation. The mindset carved out by people who suffered deeply and still found a way to live with meaning. It's not about suppressing your emotions. It's about understanding them, navigating them, and not letting them dictate your actions. It's not about being emotionless. It's about being emotionally disciplined. You feel everything, but you don't get swept away by it. You face loss, but you don't let it define your future. You accept what hurts, but you don't let it harden your heart. That's what Stoicism offers. Not comfort, but clarity. Not shortcuts, but strength. And it starts when you realize that no matter where you are, no matter how broken things feel, the one thing that's always within your reach is the ability to choose how you respond. That's your anchor. That's your shield. And when you begin to live by it, not just talk about it, but live it, you don't just survive the pain, you rise through it. And rising through it is the beginning of something new. A life where you're not ruled by fear. A life where strength isn't something you fake, but something you've earned, in silence, in struggle, and in solitude. Just like they did. There is a kind of suffering that doesn't come from the situation itself, but from the fight we put up against it. Most of the time, it's not the pain that breaks us. It's our refusal to accept it. We want things to go a certain way. We want people to stay. We want our plans to unfold exactly as we imagine. And when they don't, when life shows up uninvited with a different script, we resist. We clench our fists. We scream inside. We ask, why is this happening to me? But all that resistance only makes the pain louder. Stoicism teaches us something radically different. If you want peace, stop fighting the storm. You can't control the wind, but you can control your sail. This is where the core of Stoic practice begins, the dichotomy of control. It's a simple idea, but one that changes everything. There are two kinds of things in life, those you can control and those you can't. That's it. Most people live as if this isn't true. They waste their energy trying to control what others think of them, what the future holds, or whether bad things will happen. But the Stoics say focus only on what's truly yours, your thoughts, your actions, your choices. Everything else, let it go. It doesn't belong to you. You can't fix it. You can only meet it with grace. Imagine you're caught in the ocean during a storm. The waves are massive, the wind is violent, and your instinct is to fight it. You tense up, you panic, you try to swim against the current with everything you've got. But the more you struggle, the more energy you waste. You start to drown, not because of the storm, but because of the fight. Now imagine something different. Instead of thrashing against the water, you let yourself float. You still feel the waves. You're still in the storm. But now, you're working with it, not against it. That's what radical acceptance looks like. It doesn't mean you like the storm. It means you stop pretending you can control it. This is not giving up. It's not passivity. It's wisdom. It's understanding that peace doesn't come from fixing everything around you. It comes from facing reality as it is, not as you wish it were. Pain is part of life. Disappointment, failure, betrayal, loss. These are not glitches in the system. They are the system. You don't get to escape them, but you do get to decide how to respond. And that begins with acceptance. You don't have to accept that something is good, only that it is. If someone breaks your heart, you don't need to tell yourself it was meant to be. You don't need to call the pain a blessing. You just need to say, it happened, I can't undo it, but I can choose what happens next. That simple shift in thinking is what separates suffering from growth. The moment you stop asking, why me, and start saying, now what? You start moving forward. Not because you have everything figured out, but because you've stopped arguing with reality. One of the best ways to practice this mindset is through journaling. Not the kind where you vent endlessly and stay stuck in your emotions, but a clear, focused exercise. Take a sheet of paper. Draw a line down the middle. On one side, write down everything that's bothering you. Everything you're afraid of, hurt by, stressed about. Be honest. Let it all out. Then, On the other side, ask yourself, which of these things are within my control? You'll probably notice that most of them aren't. You can't control if someone comes back. You can't control what people say. You can't control the past. But maybe you can control how you treat yourself, what you focus on today, whether you take one small step instead of sitting in the same place. This practice isn't about magical thinking, it's about clarity. Most of our mental suffering comes from being entangled in things we have no power over. And once you clearly separate what's yours to hold and what isn't, life feels lighter. You stop trying to carry the world on your shoulders. You stop trying to control how people see you. You stop expecting life to follow your script. And from that place, that clean, honest, grounded place, you begin to reclaim your strength. Radical acceptance is not an emotion, it's a decision to be in alignment with what is, even if it hurts. And once you make that decision, something strange happens. The pain doesn't disappear, but it becomes bearable. The fear doesn't vanish, but it no longer controls you. You start to realize that strength isn't pretending to be unaffected. Strength is showing up in the middle of the storm and saying, "This is what I've got, and I'll work with it." There's a kind of deep, quiet power that comes from no longer being at war with life, when you accept that people might disappoint you, that your best effort might still fail, that love doesn't always stay, that dreams don't always come true. You stop living in a constant resistance. You start finding peace, not after the storm, but inside it. You realize that pain will always be part of life, but suffering is a choice. And that choice begins with letting go of what was never yours to control. No one escapes the storm, but some people drown in it, while others learn to float. The difference isn't luck, it's mindset. It's the willingness to stop wishing things were different and start working with what's real. When you master that, not once, but over and over, every time life surprises you, you become mentally strong in a way that no outside force can undo. Because you're no longer reacting to life, you're responding to it. And that response is what defines who you are. So start today, even if you're in pain. Especially if you're in pain, ask yourself, what am I holding on to that's not mine to carry? Put it down, then ask, what is mine? Focus on that. It might be as small as taking a breath, making your bed, drinking a glass of water, saying no to one more self-destructive thought. These little things seem insignificant, but they are acts of control, of power, of reclaiming your role in your own life. And when you keep choosing them day after day, storm after storm, you don't just survive. You become someone the storm can't touch, not because it's easy, but because you've learned the most powerful truth of all. You don't need to control the storm, you only need to control yourself inside it. There's a level of strength that goes beyond acceptance. It's one thing to survive the pain, to endure it, to keep going despite everything life throws at you. That alone is a huge victory. But there's another level, one that most people never reach because it sounds impossible. It's the idea that you can actually learn to love what happens to you, even the parts that hurt. This isn't about denial. It's not about pretending everything is great when it's not. It's about transforming your entire relationship with fate, about turning pain into fuel. This idea has a name, amor fati, the love of fate. It sounds strange at first. Why would anyone love what hurts them? Why would anyone be grateful for loss, failure, grief? But that's the whole point. Amor fati is not a weak kind of love. It's not a romantic fantasy. It's a powerful, resilient mindset. It says, I don't just accept this happened, I welcome it, I use it, I make something out of it. Friedrich Nietzsche captured it with a metaphor. A blazing fire makes flame and brightness out of everything that is thrown into it. That's what you are meant to become. Not a fragile flame that flickers when the wind blows, but a fire that grows stronger with each log of pain life throws at you. Marcus Aurelius lived this idea too. Over and over he reminded himself not just to accept events, but to see them as part of the larger design. He wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." To a Stoic, obstacles aren't distractions. They're invitations. Each hardship is a challenge to rise. Every difficulty becomes a test of character. Amor fati means embracing your fate as if you had chosen it, even when it's bitter. Because you understand that the pain isn't working against you, it's shaping you. This doesn't mean you celebrate tragedy. It doesn't mean you smile through betrayal or pretend death doesn't hurt. Amor fati isn't about emotionless living. It's about transformation. It's about looking at what happened, no matter how unfair, how painful, how unwanted, and saying, "This will not break me. I will use this." You take the broken pieces and build something new, something stronger, something that wouldn't exist without the pain. Let's be clear, this is not easy. It's one of the hardest things you'll ever do. It's easy to love the good days, to love the moments when things go your way, but that doesn't make you strong, that makes you lucky. True mental strength is found in how you respond to the days that don't go your way. The days when you lose what you thought you couldn't live without. The days when your heart is so heavy it hurts to breathe. Amor fati is not about feeling good. It's about choosing a response that turns darkness into direction. Think about it this way. Imagine your life as a forge. Every event, every person, every loss, they're raw materials. Amor fati is the fire that melts them down. It doesn't pick and choose what to work with. It takes everything, even the worst parts, and melts them into fuel for your future. Your heartbreak becomes compassion. Your failure becomes wisdom. Your loneliness becomes self-knowledge. It doesn't happen instantly. It takes time. But if you hold the mindset, if you stay in the fire long enough, something new is formed. You're not just recovering, you're being remade. This isn't about fate being fair, it's about you becoming fierce, about refusing to waste your suffering, because if you don't use it, if you just sit in it, it will rot you from the inside. But if you use it, if you turn it into meaning, into art, into growth, then even your worst day becomes part of your story of strength. You stop asking, "Why did this happen to me?" and start asking, "What will I do with this now?" One of the most powerful ways to embody amor fati is to reframe your story. Take the hardest moment of your life and ask yourself, what did this force me to learn? What part of me did it wake up? Maybe it taught you patience. Maybe it showed you who your real friends were. Maybe it made you realize how strong you are. Even if it still hurts, even if it always will, that doesn't mean it was meaningless. Amor fati teaches you to choose the meaning, to create value from the things that tried to break you. There's also something deeply calming about this philosophy. So much of our pain comes from wishing things were different. We replay the past. We imagine different outcomes. We hold on to the what-ifs like they're lifelines. But amor fati tells you to stop mourning the life that didn't happen and start living the one that did. The only way forward is through, and if you can walk through your life not with bitterness but with courage and love, then nothing is wasted. You can even start small. Practice amor fati in everyday frustrations, the traffic jam that delays your plans, the unexpected news that ruins your routine, the person who cancels on you last minute. Instead of complaining, ask, how can I use this? Maybe it gives you time to think. Maybe it teaches you flexibility. Maybe it strengthens your patience. These little acts of mental alchemy prepare you for the bigger storms. The more you train yourself to love your fate in the small moments, the more ready you are when the real pain hits. This mindset also changes your relationship with fear. Most of us are afraid of what might happen, of loss, rejection, failure, death. But if you can learn to love whatever comes, truly love it, then you become fearless, not because nothing hurts, but because nothing can stop your growth. Amor fati turns life into a one-way journey toward meaning. No matter what happens, you move forward, you rise, you transform. That's not blind optimism, that's radical responsibility. It's the highest form of freedom. So when something bad happens, something you didn't ask for, something you wish you could undo, pause, breathe, feel everything, but then ask yourself, what now? How do I make this mine? That question is the turning point. That question is where suffering ends and creation begins. Amor fati doesn't mean you wanted it to happen. It means you're not going to waste the pain. It means you're going to rise through it, brighter, stronger, and more alive than before. Remember, you are the fire. Everything that happens is just fuel. There's a kind of power that doesn't come from loudness, from domination, or from control over others. It comes from stillness, not the stillness of silence, but the stillness of clarity, the kind of inner quiet that keeps you grounded when the world is on fire. This is what the Stoics were really after, not a life without pain, but a mind that remains unshaken in the face of it. When everything outside of you is chaotic, uncertain, or collapsing, the one place that must remain steady is inside of you. That's where your power lives, and that's what the Stoics called your inner fortress. Marcus Aurelius, perhaps the most famous Stoic of all, ruled during one of the darkest times in Roman history. Plagues swept across the empire, killing millions. There were endless wars on the borders, betrayals inside the palace, and deep personal grief in his family life. Despite all that, Marcus never allowed himself to be ruled by panic. He didn't numb himself with pleasure or distractions. Instead, he wrote, "Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." Think about that. A man who had every reason to feel overwhelmed, political pressure, war, disease, loss, still believed there was a quiet place within, untouched by it all. That's what we all need to find. Not a vacation, not an escape, but a place inside ourselves that we can go to, a place that isn't ruled by anxiety, noise, or fear. That kind of mental refuge doesn't come naturally. In fact, our world is designed to pull us out of it. We're flooded with information, with news, noise, endless updates, and stimulation. Our phones buzz, our screens light up. There's barely a moment of stillness in modern life. So if we want to build an inner fortress, we have to choose to create it. We have to build it on purpose, one brick at a time. The Stoic mindset isn't just about staying calm for the sake of looking strong, it's about preserving your judgment. When you lose your calm, you lose your clarity. You stop thinking. You react emotionally. And that's when people make the worst decisions, not because they're weak, but because they've let fear take the wheel. The Stoics knew that if you want to live well, not just survive, but truly live, you need to learn how to stay clear-headed, especially when things go wrong. You need to protect your inner state like a warrior protects their homeland, because once it's invaded, you're no longer in control. So how do you build that stillness? How do you train yourself to stay grounded when life is anything but peaceful? The Stoics practice something called premeditatio malorum, or premeditation of evils. It sounds dark, but it's one of the most powerful tools they used. Every morning, they would take a few moments to imagine what might go wrong that day. Not to scare themselves, but to prepare their minds. They would picture delays, insults, losses, frustration. They would ask themselves, what if I get sick today? What if someone betrays me? What if I don't get what I want? And then they would calmly remind themselves, if it happens, I will remain composed. I will respond with reason, not rage. This practice trains your mind to expect reality, not fantasy. Most people get crushed by difficulty because they expect things to go smoothly. They assume life will be fair, people will be kind, plans will work out. So when the inevitable disruptions come, they panic. But the Stoic is different. The Stoic is already ready. They've mentally rehearsed the setback. So when it arrives, they face it like an old friend. Not because it's pleasant, but because it's familiar. Another practice that strengthens this inner calm is breath work. This is simple, but powerful. Your breath is the only thing that's always with you, no matter where you are, no matter what's happening. And it's also the fastest way to shift your nervous system from chaos to calm. When you're anxious, your breath becomes shallow. Your body thinks you're under attack. But if you take a moment to breathe deeply, slowly, deliberately, you signal to your brain that you are safe. This isn't just psychological, it's biological. Your breath is a lever you can pull to stay grounded in high-stress situations. Try this. Whenever something stressful happens, pause. Don't react, don't say anything. Just breathe in for 4 seconds, hold for 4, exhale for 4. Do it again and again. It won't make the problem disappear, but it will give you a gap, a mental space between stimulus and response. And in that space, you regain control. You get to decide what kind of person you'll be in this moment. That's where stillness begins. Not with changing the outside world, but with changing the way you meet it. There's something incredibly powerful about someone who doesn't flinch in chaos. Someone who doesn't lose their head when everyone else is panicking. That kind of presence is rare. It's magnetic. And it's not because they're cold or distant or disconnected. It's because they've trained themselves to not be ruled by the noise. They've practiced peace like other people practice anger. And when the world shakes, they don't fall. They remain. You don't need a perfect life to be calm. You don't need everything to go your way. What you need is a strong foundation inside of you. A mindset that says, no matter what happens out there, I will guard my peace in here. That doesn't mean you won't feel things. It means you won't be run by them. You'll still feel stress. You'll still get angry. You'll still have fear. But those feelings won't steer your ship. They'll pass through, like wind through a window, and your core will remain unmoved. Stillness isn't the absence of motion. It's the presence of control. It's the choice to stay centered when everything pushes you to the edge. And the more you practice it, with breath work, with negative visualization, with journaling, with self-reflection, the stronger your inner fortress becomes. At first, it's just a small refuge, a quiet moment in the middle of a noisy day, but over time it grows. And one day, you'll face something big, something truly painful, and realize that you're not crumbling like you used to. You're still standing, still thinking, still strong. And that's when you'll understand what the Stoics meant, that peace isn't found in the world, it's built within. It's earned through discipline, through intention, and through practice, through meeting life's chaos not with fear but with stillness. And once you've built that stillness, once you've stepped into it in your darkest moments, you'll never let it go, because you'll know what it's worth. Not just calm for calm's sake, but calm as a weapon, as armor, as a way to move through this world, unshaken, clear, and free. Most people spend their lives avoiding discomfort. We build routines to stay safe. We buy conveniences that make life easier. We avoid confrontation, silence, solitude, hunger, cold, pain, anything that reminds us we are fragile. But what we don't realize is that in avoiding discomfort, we also avoid growth. The Stoics saw this clearly. They believed that if you wait for hardship to find you and you haven't prepared your mind and body in advance, it will break you. But if you train yourself, if you choose small doses of a difficulty every day, then when real suffering comes, it won't destroy you. You will have already become someone who can handle it. The idea is simple: train in peace so you can bleed less in war. In the modern world, most of our suffering isn't physical. We're not fighting for food or surviving in the wilderness. We're battling self-doubt, fear of failure, anxiety, depression, overwhelm, loneliness, but the principle still holds. Mental suffering can be just as brutal as physical pain. The mind is a battlefield, and most people don't train for it. They assume they'll be okay until they're not. Until the breakup happens, until the job is lost, until they wake up one day and realize they don't know who they are anymore. That's why voluntary hardship still matters, because it's not about proving something to others. It's about building inner capacity. So when life gets hard, and it always will, you don't collapse, you rise. Seneca, the Roman Stoic, practiced voluntary hardship regularly. Even though he was wealthy, he would sleep on the floor, wear rough clothing, eat very little, and expose himself to discomfort. Not because he had to, but because he chose to. He believed that by doing this, he was training his mind to remain calm when life took a turn for the worse. He said, "Set aside a certain number of days during which you shall be content with the scantiest and cheapest fare, with coarse and rough dress, saying to yourself all the while, 'Is this the condition that I feared?'" He wanted to prove to himself that the things we're most afraid of, poverty, discomfort, loss, are not as terrifying as they seem when faced directly. You can do the same thing today in your own life. You don't have to sleep on the floor or wear a toga, but you can start choosing discomfort in small, intentional ways. Take a cold shower in the morning, wake up before the sun, go for a long walk in silence without your phone. Skip a meal and feel what hunger teaches you. Say no to a pleasure you usually reach for without thinking. These might seem like small acts, but they add up. They're not just physical challenges, they're psychological messages to yourself. I can do hard things. I am stronger than I think. I don't need comfort to be okay. The beauty of voluntary hardship is that it builds something called anti-fragility. Fragile things break when stressed. Resilient things resist stress, but anti-fragile things get stronger because of stress. That's what you want to become. You want to be the kind of person who doesn't just survive pressure, but grows because of it. And that doesn't happen by accident. It happens through training, just like a muscle grows only when it's been pushed past its limits. Your mind becomes stronger when you consistently step outside your comfort zone. But there's something else voluntary hardship does. Something even more valuable than resilience. It reveals what you truly need. So much of our anxiety comes from our attachment to things we think we can't live without. Comfort, attention, luxury, constant entertainment. When we strip those things away, even temporarily, we realize how little we actually need to be okay. We start to appreciate the simple things. We stop chasing more and start building within. That's where real confidence is born. Not from what you own or what people think of you, but from knowing that no matter what life takes away, you'll still stand. Let's take an example. Suppose you begin your day with a freezing cold shower. Your body resists. Your mind screams, "This is uncomfortable, turn the water off." But you stay with it. You breathe through the shock. You remind yourself, "This is voluntary, I can do this." By the time you step out, you've already won a mental battle. The rest of your day feels lighter, because you've already conquered the first struggle. You've proven to yourself before anyone else that you can override your fear of discomfort. That feeling stays with you. It shows up when you're faced with a difficult conversation or a long day of work or a task you want to avoid. You remember, I can do hard things. Now imagine stacking these wins. One cold shower, one skipped meal, one day without checking your phone every 5 minutes, one early morning where you get up when you want to stay in bed. These are not punishments, they are practices. They are deliberate acts of self-discipline that sharpen your mind and thicken your skin. They rewire your nervous system to stay calm under pressure. They build grit, focus, and clarity. And over time, they create a version of you that doesn't run from discomfort but walks toward it, not recklessly but courageously. Voluntary hardship also strips away entitlement. In a world where we're taught to chase ease, luxury, and pleasure at every turn, this kind of training reminds us that we don't deserve comfort, we earn it. And more importantly, we don't need it. We need strength, we need purpose, we need discipline. Those are the traits that carry us through the darkest seasons of life. When things fall apart, it won't be your comfort that saves you. It'll be your preparation, your mindset, your ability to remain composed in chaos because you've chosen to experience difficulty on your own terms. It's also worth mentioning that voluntary hardship connects you to something ancient. Every great culture has a tradition of self-discipline. Monks who fast, warriors who train in isolation, philosophers who retreat into silence. None of this is new. We're just remembering what the modern world has tried to make us forget. That peace is found not in comfort, but in strength. And strength is built by doing the hard thing, even when no one's watching, even when there's no reward but your own growth. So if you want to be mentally strong when life falls apart, don't wait until disaster strikes. Don't wait until heartbreak or loss or failure hits you in the chest. Start training now, while things are calm, while life is stable. Because that's when the real work happens. Not when you're forced to be strong, but when you choose to be. And when the storm comes, and it always comes, you'll bleed less. You'll panic less. You'll be ready. Start today. Pick one small hardship and embrace it. Let discomfort be your teacher. Let pain sharpen you. Let resistance reveal your power. Not because life is easy, but because you are becoming someone who no longer needs it to be. When you're stuck in pain, it becomes the only thing you can see. Your mind closes in around it, you obsess over what went wrong, you replay conversations, you analyze mistakes. Everything feels personal, final, and inescapable. In those moments, it's easy to forget the bigger picture. Pain narrows your focus like a tunnel, and you get trapped inside it. That's where one of the most ancient and humbling practices from Stoic philosophy becomes a lifeline. It's called Memento mori. Remember that you must die. At first, it sounds dark, even morbid. Why would anyone want to think about death, especially while struggling? But the Stoics saw it differently. They believed that remembering death wasn't about fear, it was about clarity. Death puts everything in perspective. It shakes you awake. It strips away what doesn't matter. When you remember that your time here is short, suddenly all the little worries shrink. The judgment from others, the failed goals, the arguments, the fears, they lose their power. You realize how much time you've spent worrying about things that have no real weight. You realize how many days you've wasted waiting for the right moment that may never come. Memento mori isn't about being afraid of dying. It's about making sure you're truly living. It's a mental reset that says, this won't last forever, so what are you doing with it? Seneca said, "You act like mortals in all that you fear, and like immortals in all that you desire." We live as if we'll never die when we waste time. We postpone dreams. We avoid hard conversations. We numb ourselves with distractions. But we live as if we might die tomorrow when something scares us. We hesitate, we panic, we shrink. The Stoics flipped this. They used the reality of death to fuel their actions, not in a reckless way, but in a focused one. If you remember that today could be your last day, it doesn't make you hopeless. It makes you sharp. You look around and realize, This moment matters. This conversation matters. This breath matters. When you understand this, pain becomes less suffocating because death doesn't just remind you that life is short, it reminds you that pain is temporary. Everything ends. The heartbreak, the confusion, the regret, none of it is forever. Even your worst day has an expiration date. Memento mori teaches you to stop clinging so tightly, to loosen your grip on things you can't control, to stop acting as if every setback defines your entire life. It doesn't. The clock is always ticking, and that can either terrify you or liberate you. Here's the truth. We spend most of our lives pretending death isn't real. We bury it under entertainment, comfort, goals, distractions. But deep down, we know, and that quiet knowledge haunts us, unless we face it directly. The Stoics believe that when you make peace with death, everything else becomes easier. You stop being paralyzed by fear, you stop being obsessed with control, you stop expecting perfection from yourself and others because you know this is all fleeting, and that knowledge makes you kinder, braver, and more awake. One of the most powerful ways to practice memento mori is to simply sit with the reality of it, daily. Close your eyes and imagine that today is your last. Not in a panicked way, in a clear, quiet, honest way. If you knew you wouldn't wake up tomorrow, how would you spend today? Who would you call? What would you stop putting off? What thoughts would suddenly become irrelevant? This isn't a depressing exercise, it's a liberating one, because it clears the fog. It puts your real priorities in front of you. And when you open your eyes again, the world looks different. The things you were stressed about don't seem so big. The love you've been withholding becomes easier to give. The courage you've been waiting for suddenly arrives. Because what are you waiting for? Another way to apply memento mori is to reflect on the lives of others, especially those who are gone, people you admired, people you miss, people who lived full lives or had theirs cut short. Ask yourself, what did they leave behind? What mattered in the end? Was it the money, the achievements, or was it how they made others feel? Was it the strength they showed when things got hard? Was it the simple beauty of showing up with love, presence, and honesty? Death reminds us that legacy is built in moments, not milestones. And the kind of legacy that matters is one of character, not trophies. There's also something comforting about knowing that death is the great equalizer. It humbles everyone. Kings, beggars, geniuses, and fools alike. No one escapes it. So the pressure to be perfect, gone. The pressure to win life before it's over, gone. The only thing that remains is the question: did you live with courage? Did you love with depth? Did you become the person you were meant to be, even when it was hard? If you can say yes to those things, or even begin to move in that direction, then you're already winning. When you think about death regularly, you also become a better decision maker, because your choices become cleaner. You stop chasing things that don't matter. You stop holding grudges. You stop comparing yourself to people on screens. You don't need to impress strangers or cling to empty goals. You realize that what matters most is often simple: peace of mind, strong character, deep relationships, and the courage to be fully alive. Now, not later, because later isn't guaranteed. Memento mori also helps you forgive, not just others, but yourself. If you're carrying guilt or shame from the past, remembering that death is coming puts it in perspective. You realize how little time you have to keep punishing yourself. You realize how pointless it is to keep replaying what you can't change. If you're alive today, you have a chance to begin again. You can write a different story. You can stop being the person who suffers endlessly and start being the one who transforms the pain. Death doesn't care about your past, but it gives meaning to your present. And strangely, the more you think about death, the more you appreciate life. Ordinary things become extraordinary. A walk in the sun, the sound of someone's voice, the feel of warm water, the sight of trees moving in the wind. These aren't just background noise anymore. They become treasures because you know they won't last forever. Memento mori sharpens your senses. It turns someday into now. It makes you grateful for things you used to ignore. It makes you fall in love with the world again. Not because it's perfect, but because it's fleeting. So let this truth settle in. You are going to die. Maybe not today, maybe not for a long time, but one day your story will end. The page will turn and there will be no more words. What you do between now and then, that's your power, that's your responsibility, and that's your chance to live in a way that death can't touch. Not by avoiding it, but by using it as a compass, as a lens that helps you see clearly, as a reminder that life is short, pain is temporary, and every second is a gift. Memento mori doesn't take away fear. It replaces it with focus. It doesn't make life easier, it makes it more meaningful. And if you carry it with you, not as a burden, but as a guide, then no matter what happens, you won't waste your time. You'll live like someone who knows the clock is ticking and who's not afraid. Because when death no longer scares you, life becomes yours again, fully, freely, fiercely. There's one truth that sits at the very core of every Stoic teaching, and it's this: you always have a choice. No matter what happens to you, no matter how cruel, unfair, or chaotic life becomes, there is always one part of you that remains untouched. It's the part that chooses your response. The part that decides what kind of person you will be, even when everything else is falling apart. Viktor Frankl, a Holocaust survivor and psychiatrist, expressed this better than almost anyone in history. After losing his family, enduring starvation, beatings, and the constant shadow of death in Nazi concentration camps, he said this: "Everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way." That quote is not just beautiful. It's powerful because it was tested in the darkest conditions imaginable. Frankl wasn't writing philosophy from a desk in a warm room. He was writing from inside a nightmare, a place where most people would give up hope, where suffering had no obvious meaning, and where cruelty had no limit. And yet, even there, he realized something profound. If you cannot change the outside world, you still have power over the world within. That small space between what happens and how you respond, that's your freedom, and it can never be taken from you, unless you give it away. This is exactly what the Stoics had been teaching centuries earlier. Epictetus, a man who had once been a slave, put it this way: "It's not things that disturb us, but our judgments about them." What he meant was simple. It's not the event itself that breaks you, it's the meaning you attach to it. You get fired from your job. That's painful. But does it mean you're worthless? Only if you decide that it does. Someone leaves you. That's heartbreaking. But does it mean you'll never love again? Only if you tell yourself that story. The Stoics believed that while you can't control what life brings to your doorstep, you can absolutely control what you make of it. We often forget this. When things go wrong, our first instinct is to blame, to look outside ourselves. If only they hadn't done that to me. If only this hadn't happened. If only life were different. And sometimes those feelings are valid. People can be cruel, life can be unfair. But the Stoics and Frankl both ask us to go deeper, to stop asking, "Why me?" and to start asking, "What now?" Because that question is where your power lives. You don't get to choose your circumstances, but you do get to choose your character. Let's be clear. This doesn't mean you're supposed to smile through your suffering. It doesn't mean pretending that things are okay when they're not. It simply means recognizing that even in your worst moment, there's a decision to be made. Will you become bitter or better? Will you shut down or step up? Will you surrender your mind to despair? Or will you hold on to your dignity, even if everything else is gone? That decision might seem small, but it's everything, because that's how you build your identity, not in perfect moments, but in painful ones. Every time you choose to respond with courage instead of self-pity, with integrity instead of resentment, with effort instead of excuses, you become stronger. Not just temporarily, but permanently. You're rewiring your mind. You're carving out a version of yourself that no pain can erase. And the more often you make that choice, the more unshakable you become. It's also important to understand that choosing your response doesn't mean choosing your emotions. You can't always choose what you feel. Grief, anger, sadness, they come and go like weather, and that's okay. You don't need to suppress them. The Stoics didn't teach emotional numbness, they taught emotional discipline. Feel what you feel. Let the emotion rise, but then choose how you respond. Don't act out of impulse. Don't let the emotion own you. Be the observer. Let the feeling pass, and then respond like the person you want to become. This gap between stimulus and response is where true freedom begins. You get cut off in traffic. Do you scream or do you breathe? You get rejected. Do you spiral into self-hate or do you accept and move on? Someone disrespects you. Do you react with vengeance or with composure? These moments seem small, but they are training your mind every day. Every choice you make, no matter how minor, is a vote for the kind of person you are becoming. And sometimes the choice is simply to keep going when nothing makes sense. When it feels like everything's falling apart, when you want to give up. Choosing to not quit is a response to choosing to show up for yourself, to take the next step, even if it's small, even if it's shaky, is one of the most powerful things you can do. Because you're proving to yourself, I am not a victim. I am not just a product of my circumstances. I am someone who chooses my path, even when it's hard. This mindset changes everything. It turns suffering into strength. It turns chaos into clarity. And it makes you nearly impossible to break. Not because you avoid pain, but because you know how to meet it with presence, with awareness, with choice. If you're struggling right now, if life feels heavy and unfair, remind yourself of this. The pain may not be your fault, but your response is still your responsibility. You can choose to let it define you, or you can choose to define yourself through it. You can choose to become bitter or become wise. You can choose to collapse or to rise. And that choice, that's the one thing no one can take from you. So ask yourself, in this moment, what kind of person do I want to be? Not in theory, not in fantasy, but here now in the middle of this situation, with all its messiness and pain. Who do I want to become? And what small choice can I make today that reflects that? Because that's all it takes. One small choice made again and again. The choice to be calm when it would be easier to lash out. The choice to forgive when you want revenge. The choice to try one more time when everything inside you wants to quit. These are not dramatic acts, but they are deeply powerful, and over time, they build something unshakable inside you, something no one can give you, and something no one can ever take away. That is your freedom, that is your strength, that is your power, and it has always been yours. When life falls apart, it can feel like you're the only one going through it, like everyone else has it figured out while you're quietly breaking inside. But the truth is, every person you've ever met has carried pain. Everyone has faced moments that felt like the end, moments when the weight was too much, when the future was too dark, and the silence too loud. You are not alone in your suffering, and more importantly, your suffering does not make you weak. It makes you human. The Stoics never promised a life without pain. They never sold comfort or easy answers. What they offered was something far more powerful: the strength to stand tall inside the storm, to feel everything and still remain rooted, to experience heartbreak, loss, failure, confusion, and to not be destroyed by it. That's what real strength is. Not the absence of emotion, but the courage to face it without losing yourself. You now know the tools: radical acceptance, the art of letting go of what you can't control, amor fati, the mindset that transforms pain into power, inner stillness, the fortress you build through breath, reflection, and presence, voluntary hardship, the training ground for life's chaos, memento mori, the reminder that time is short and every moment is a chance to live deeper. And above all, choice, the one freedom that is always yours, no matter how broken the world around you becomes. You will fall, you will break, you will lose people, lose faith, lose direction. That's not a failure, that's life. But you will also rise, you will rebuild, you will become someone you never imagined you could be, not despite the pain, but because of it. Every scar will become part of your story, every setback, a page in your growth. And every time you choose to keep going, even when it hurts, you are becoming someone stronger, someone wiser, someone unshakable. So when life falls apart, don't search for escape, search for meaning, search for strength. Return to these principles, return to yourself, breathe, reflect, choose, and above all, stand tall. Let this be your reminder, now and whenever you need it. Save this video. Come back when it's hard, when you've lost something, when you're afraid, when you're on the edge. Watch it again, let it guide you back to yourself, and never forget, you are stronger than you think.